And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael, and I am joined tonight with a guest that I am truly excited to have on the show. And I hope you all get as much out of her information as I know I will. I am so excited to introduce to you all Lesley Mitchell-Clarke.
Well, thank you, Michael, for such a lovely introduction. And I am so pleased to be here and to be able to speak to your, wonderful viewership. I know it's filled with really forward thinking, open people. I can already feel the good vibes, as we say. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Michael.
Well, thank you for coming on. And for those who may not be familiar with you and your story, can you give a little bit of background for everyone?
Well, I have been a practitioner rather, of hypnotherapy for probably close to 20 years. So, in other words, it wasn't really my first career. I was very busy as an actress and singer and later as a music industry publicist. But about 20 years ago, I went through a kind of, I guess you'd call it kind of a midlife crisis where I had found, no value of substance in what I was doing, and I was longing for something else. I wasn't sure. So my husband, God bless him, he bought me as a gift, a past life regression with a reputable hypnotherapist. Now I went and experienced that, and certainly it was hugely informative as far as how certain specific past lives related to me now. But what I really took away, what was the gem that I took away, is I knew that I could do that kind of work. I knew that I had done it before. Now, that I think also was a kind of a past life thing, because hypnosis as a practice is well over 10,000 years old. The Greeks practiced it, the Romans practiced it, and I believe deep into antiquity, the Atlanteans and the Lemurians and also advanced civilizations from the subcontinent, they all practiced a form of hypnosis. So I just knew that I could do it. And so of course initially I took my basic training, and I was working in a kind of a clinic that I used to call it the hypno mill, because it was just people lined up. It was all about really weight loss and cigarette smoking. That was like the main thing. But um it was like boot camp. It was like working the ER. I mean, I probably learned more from that experience working in that type of a clinic than anybody could have provided, because there was so much volume. I saw 6 people a day. That's, quite a bit. So anyway, after a period of time, I began taking various credentials. I initially took, it's a 3-part program we have for metaphysical hypnosis. It includes past life regression, interlife regression, which we discussed off camera, and a third thing, which I prefer to call energy release, but it is oftentimes called entity release, based on the idea that one can have an attachment that needs to be, 86 ASAP. so, and I took other credentials in pediatric hypnosis, pain management, a number of other things. So, not only do I work in the area of metaphysical hypnosis, but I also do plenty of what you would call mainstream hypnotherapy. In fact, one of my major jobs is I work for a practice that specializes in frontline responders and dealing with trauma. And by that, I mean, police officers, EMTs, firemen, and all of the related professions to that. So I have sort of a wide spectrum of what's going on. But the way I came to working in not only a lot of metaphysical hypnosis, but in working in regression for people who feel that they have had um, uh, encounters with extraterrestrials or something along those lines. Um, I when I eventually worked in a much nicer clinic in a very shishi area of Toronto. And about once a month, someone would call in and they'd say, I have missing memory. I've got, marks on my body. I got a triangle on my chest. I got, or whatever they said. And no one else in the clinic wanted anything to do with it. No other practitioner. And I said, well, these people have to be helped because most of them are probably completely legitimate. So I just said, start feeding these people my way, and at least I can make them feel better. And so that's how my real, I suppose, my real specialty in regression, particularly with individuals who feel that they have had an extraterrestrial experience. That's where it really, really began. And I just was able to work with some amazing people. And then eventually, and within my own practice, I worked with many individuals who were lifelong experiencers. And a couple of years ago, I wrote a book with one of those individuals who I had treated for a number of sessions, named Wes Roberts, a lifelong experiencer, and it is called Intersections: A True Story of Extraterrestrial Contact. So if you have a chance, you can get it on Amazon, Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, wherever you Amazon. It is available, and it does, unlike maybe some other books that you may have read about regression, I have an awful lot of procedural information in there, as well as a lot of real time transcriptions of what transpired in the session. So there you go. I think is that kind of what you were looking for, Michael?
That was perfect. And
Okay.
I want to take a moment and just say thank you for doing that and for stepping up and helping
Uh,
those people, especially first responders in the UFO
oh,
community.
thank you. Thank you. The work with the first responders is really sacred to me. I have a really strong feeling about, these dear people who put their lives on the line every day, and they're facing just, they deal with people who are mentally ill, people who are armed, you name it, they deal with it. And if they're sensitive people, which almost all of them are, they take away real trauma. And eventually, it has to be dealt with. And
Right.
so I feel very fortunate, very blessed to be able to help them to, reintegrate into their lives.
Right. And the first question I have for you to lead into a topic actually comes from people asking me, and I could never answer it
Mm-hmm.
because it was just something I was aware of and stepped into, kind of. And that is, how do you know you've had past lives? And how do you tell, like, if you're dreaming of a past life versus just a normal dream?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very interesting question. Well, first of all, I will have to tell you that there is no question that we have all lived multiple lifetimes. That is a given. That is an accepted concept. So that's how I began, with just this idea that yes, this is a thing that happens. Now, many people, when they come to me for a past life regression, they may not have any clear idea of where they've lived before, but the reason they're there is they need direction. They need some type of answer to maybe why they have been repeating patterns, why they've been, in abusive relationships with partners, why they've had mothers that were bitches. I mean, it's, they're often coming in because they are like sort of stuck in their lives at whatever point, we're talking about. And what invariably happens now, of course, I can absolutely bring people to a specific lifetime that they have been having dreams about. That is another way to go, because very often we have little breakthrough dreams, but they're generally repetitive. And it simply means that there's significance there, whether you know someone now in this lifetime was important, who was an analogous person there. It, but that's another kind of thing that also happens, and we will deal with it in that way. We'll go to the specific lifetime. But most commonly, when people come to me, they're wide open, but they don't necessarily have a memory or a feeling, or they're just stuck, right? So the information that they get, invariably, they get what they need to know. And I try to bring the individual through 3 lifetimes when I work with them. Now, whether or not that's possible kind of depends on the individual, and also on how rapid a verbal processor they are. In other words, for example, I can be taking someone back to, it's the time of, Louis the 14th, what have you, and they're in Versailles, and I can ask a question about what is your role at Versailles? And there will be a long pause. And I can't like jump in and interrupt, because I know that the process is going on internally, but they may not say anything for what I would consider a lengthy period of time. So that if someone is a slow verbal processor like that, it does take longer. But on the other hand, many people, I'll say, well, what do you do in the court of Versailles? And they may even have a French accent, or may even be speaking in French, and say that they're a lady in waiting, and this is what they're wearing, and this is what the weather is like. So, people are very individual in their ways of recalling. I believe that we can recall everything with the right techniques. And in hypnosis, or hypnotherapy rather, the very powerful, secret of the whole thing is that once we get the physical body relaxed enough, and that may take a little while, may take 15 minutes. I don't, I know when someone is now relaxed enough to go through the process, because I look at physiological aspects. I look at respiration. I look at the color of their skin. I look at their papillary skin response. I look at all of these things and when I feel that the client is finally where they need to be in the alpha state of receptivity, then we begin moving them backward in time through their current life, and I have them pick out happy incidents. I don't want anybody to be upset. I have them pick out happy incidents. We go back, back, back. We go through the birth experience, and then invariably those individuals are shown the lives or the life that they need to see for exactly where they are in what we call the present time.
That's really interesting, because when I was studying for myself to do healing work, I came across what was called timeline therapy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it seems like it's a little bit similar to what you do. Is we call it the root event,
Mhm.
learn from it, keep the positive, drop it in, and then bring it forward, and then be like, wow, you can feel the difference.
Exactly. And we use timeline in neurolinguistic programming, because I also use, in addition to hypnosis techniques, I also use an awful lot of NLP. So that's a verified, bona fide technique, using timeline. So yes, there is a similarity there. I feel like my job as a past life regressionist is to gently guide the individual through their experiences, and also to release trauma, to help to find resolution. And there's a lot of aftercare when with the way that I was taught. You look at the life and you say, what did I learn? What did I not learn? What did I not learn? What could I have done better? In the way that I work, there's a rather large aftercare section where the person is still in hypnosis, but is giving me the answers in present time.
That's really cool. And I'm sitting here thinking in my head too is I know like the experience deja vu is not necessarily past lives because it's could be a current time, but could some of those deja vu moments actually be the past life trying to make itself known and be saying,
Oh,
hey, pay attention to me. You need to look at me now.
I think so, Michael. I do. I think deja vu is a combination of several different things. It could be the result of projecting ourselves into the future when we're in a sleep state, when we're able to astral project or what have you, and simply, being out of sync, if you will. But many people who do come to see me have recurring dreams of certain I would have to say specific times in history or certain relationships. So those are all signs that there is something of significance that's trying to, pop through. I mean, it's all in here, and I think that maybe many times I thought, well, why do we not just have free memory? Why, do we come in thinking that, this is our first and only experience? And I guess the answer is it's kind of cultural because not every culture does that. And even, within the Christian belief system, even Jesus Christ said, I will come again. So I don't really see any conflict. I think it's the way that we grow as spiritual beings. And I think that Earth is, if you would, I think that planet Earth is the cruel school. I think
I agree.
the toughest things happen here. So souls that come here are really dedicated to either the learning experience or helping and healing others, right? So, or a
Right.
combination of both. We have a tremendous amount of healers here now, helping to prepare our civilization for what I hope will be a uh, an upgrade, to a vibrational upgrade, perhaps, where we will no longer be, fighting with each other and starving each other and all of the other heinous things that are part of a more animal, more primitive nature. Unfortunately, we are spirits in the material world. And as in the words of Sting, we are, so we're here, we're in our meat suits, we're doing the best we can. But many of us have chosen now to incarnate at this particular time because of the transitional nature of our times.
And I have to thank you because when you were describing deja vu and all of that, and when you said time skip and it could be from being in the future, not in your out of sync, it made sense. A moment in my, I think I was probably close to teenager
Mm-hmm.
or preteen, where I had deja vu and it freaked everybody out. And so I never talked about it after that.
Oh, yeah.
And what it was is I was in this person's house and I said, can I get a drink of water? And she goes, well, let me tell you where the glasses are. And I said, I know where they are.
Mhm.
And she goes, what? And I said, they're in this cabinet. And she goes, yeah. And she goes, what else do you know? I said, your silverware's in this one, your plates are in this one. And this was my first time ever being in this house.
Mhm.
And so it freaked her out that I knew where stuff was in cabinets. And even I was a little freaked out
I
because I'm like,
bet.
I
Yeah.
don't know how I know this, but I know this. And
Well, time isn't anything like this linear strip that we have been taught it is. And there are some schools of thought that even say that all of time is happening at once, and we are flipping through interdimensional realities all the time. So, it gives me a headache to think about it too much, but I can absolutely say that I think that linear time is an illusion, that in fact space-time is nothing like that, and we, I believe, under certain circumstances are able to move freely about in it. Now, I know that there are mechanical space-time transportation devices. A lot of, there's been the Montauk chair and this, that, and the other, but I think that it really can all be done from a spiritual standpoint without
right,
mechanics, is my feeling, but
I I agree with you. And I've actually stumbled on a TV show on the Curiosity Channel. It's on one of our streaming services, and it's called The Butterfly Effect. And I
Mhm.
thought it was going
Mhm.
to be about the butterfly effect.
No. There's a
And
wonderful movie with that same title, by the way.
right.
Yeah.
But I love how they make it look like it's a bunch of dots and the line can go up, turn right, go up,
Mhm.
and then they go, now we hit a turning point.
Mhm.
If history goes this way, this happens. If we went this way, this could have been what happened. And it's amazing, what happens. And to think about that, it's like you're saying, time is not a straight line where
Oh
you
no.
begin and end, that I view it more like a tree almost.
Well, yeah, and in keeping that metaphor in your mind, I really believe that there are always several potential timelines presented, and the ones that start to energize are the ones that are more likely to be, then populated by action and by, us carrying on with our, what have you. But yeah, I think I completely agree. It probably is much more like a tree with many, many branches, but it certainly is not a little line. And I believe that it is possible to move interdimensionally into various time space locations, given, I know that even remote viewers can do it. So it doesn't require the Montauk chair. It can be a completely spiritual astral event to time travel.
So with the talking about multiple timelines, I just had a thought pop in my head, and I don't know if it's going to bring you a headache to think about it, but having multiple timelines going at the same time, could a past life, what we're considering past life memory or life that we're seeing, be an alternate timeline or
Why
dimension?
not? Why not? Why not? Why not? And then we're just tuning into that. Once we get into the subconscious mind, you see, the subconscious mind has no concept of linear time. It just doesn't, the way it works. So once we get into that zone, I think an individual can travel anywhere. And many times, and this is something that's fascinating to me. Many times, I will have been blessed to work with experiencers again who are lifelong experiencers, and they will tell me about the worlds or the world from which they really emanate on a soul level. So there are people that come to me that are essentially homesick. They've incarnated here, but they're very homesick from the planet or the realm where they have actually evolved and so a person can be here, an individual can be here in physical form and still be really, halfway there to some other reality. Now, and also something else, and I found this fascinating. One of my clients years ago, again a lifelong experiencer, she had a relationship with beings that very much sounded Pleiadian to me. They were blonde and red haired and slender, and they really sounded like that classic description. So one of them in particular, who she called Angie because she happened to look like an angel, or so my client thought as a little girl. So Angie would pick up my client when she was a little girl. She would just come out to the backyard and get into a space, conveyance with Angie, and off they'd go. Now, at one point, my client said to Angie, "Can you show me where you're from, where your people live? I want to see where you come from." And they were in fact in outer space, and Angie said, "Well, I can take you to the area where we are, but you won't be able to see it because we are actually vibrating and we exist in another dimension." So So we are probably, in a universe completely full of life. And most of it we probably cannot perceive because we are vibrating at the level of like a septic tank pump. I mean, we're really bad. We're really down there. Look at what's going on our planet. I think that if there is in fact a huge multi species space organization like Gene Roddenberry imagined, and I think that there very well might be, but if there is, they must be completely disgusted with us. Disgusted. We can't even, and we talk about, how could we possibly be ready for intergalactic communication when we are still having problems in, the north and south of the United States? How is this possible? We're not ready. We're still functioning at a very low level of suspicion and hatred, in my opinion.
I have to agree. And one of the things I was thinking about as we were discussing that was how many people are like, oh, I have a hard time wrapping my head around being like alive during the Middle Ages, say, or, the ancient times, and meaning, past life wise. And then you go and say, yeah, and you could have been from a star and add in the galactic. And it's like, I'm just imagining people going, wait, I had a hard enough time imagining here. Now you're adding in a whole nother
I
realm.
know, it's a trip. Well, I think what's important to maybe try to get your head around at this point is that we are all in the same soul group in our basic quadrant or realm of the galaxy. So whether beings look exactly like us or whether they are aquatic or whether, I think probably most beings that we can incarnate into most of the species we can incarnate into are probably bipedal, rather similar in a ballpark way to what we are now. Otherwise, it would be probably very difficult. At least that's what some psychics have told me. So I think we do essentially incarnate into bodies that have a certain repetitive pattern, if you will, a galactic pattern. But I'm telling you that, I'm not talking about people who come to me for for memories of ET experiences, but when I am doing just regular garden variety past life regressions, it is not unusual at all for a person to remember a lifetime on another planet where they feel much more connected emotionally than they do here.
And I have to wonder too, because I have this experience, and my family and I, we make joke of it, is like having memories of past lives or different abilities. And like one is, being able to move faster than by car, like being
Hmm.
here and traveling by thought and being somewhere else instantaneous. I'm wondering, do you find that in your regression sessions and past lives where people are like, oh, I'm so frustrated because I can't do this here.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
only reason we can't is because we tell ourselves we can't.
Yes, yes. I That is such a common thing. As a matter of fact, that is such a common thing where people are, they're recalling lives where um, they had much more control of the physical world, shall we say, manipulation of gravity, all of these kinds of things, which I believe were part of the ancient world. You don't have to be a bloody genius to try and understand how a bunch of, Neolithic farmers moved, the huge triptychs of Stonehenge, 300 miles from Wales. That did not, I'm sorry, that's like saying the pyramids. If I see one more thing about like sleds and 500,000 guys wearing diapers hauling that stuff up there, I'm going to scream. I don't think any sane person can accept that this was the Neolithic builders. If the structures that they built, and I'm talking about Göbekli Tepe, I'm talking about some of the most ancient structures on the world. They had knowledge of how to manipulate gravity. Now, we don't even understand gravity. And I'm saying that with an absolutely straight face. Gravity is not totally understood, but I believe it may be part of space time in some sense. But the ancients, and especially the ancients who had antediluvian origins, who maybe themselves were Palladians, the Atlanteans and the Lemurians, they had absolute knowledge of how to um, manipulate matter, right? Shall we say?
Right.
So these are things, as you said earlier, these are things we can all do. We have forgotten who we are. We are a race, a world with amnesia. We have amnesia. We don't remember who we are. We don't remember our past civilizations. We don't even remember what happened 10 years ago in the civil rights movement. We are amnesiacs. And why this has happened, uh, this is a, this is something that I would love to hear opinions on. I certainly have no answer for it, why we have global amnesia, and especially when for me, it seems so easy to release the memories.
Yeah. To me, I've kind of gravitated to the force of thought, meaning there's groups out there who feed off of our fear and everything, and so they try to manipulate us and control us and keep us down through fear so they can feed off of that. And if we did, like you're saying, unlock our potential remember who we are,
Hmm.
then we overthrow them and they lose their power over us. And
Yeah. You have a point because fear is the great stoppage. It is the great weapon that the bad guys wield. Fear. That is absolutely true. I have to agree with that. And that in itself, generating fear would be a technique that would be used to prevent illumination. I mean, I'm not attacking any particular religious belief system, but if there's anything where they're talking about a fearful God, that's not what's happening, I don't think.
right. And
I don't believe in that. I believe that, in the Old Testament, the old God Yahweh, the really difficult, God of the ancient Hebrews, I believe that was Enlil, an Anunnaki who didn't like us much anyway. And so, yes, those beings existed, but they were not the creative force of the universe. They were not a loving, forgiving, all accepting God, which I believe is what is at the root of our creation, although I can't, visualize it or really conceive of it fully, but I believe it. That we are it essentially is a universe of free will. And that's why so many heinous things go on. It's a universe of free will. We make our mistakes, we learn from them, and hopefully we begin to perfect ourselves.
it's interesting how you point out the dichotomy and duality of you had the Old Testament God versus the New Testament God, and even the religions talk about it's a new God, and
Mhm.
nobody realizes, wait, that means there's a regime change
Yeah.
in essence. And so it's like, yeah, and nobody says, oh, the God of the Old Testament had a change of heart and became loving. No, it's
No.
you had the God of the Old Testament and you have the God of the New Testament. There's
Yeah.
no, it's the same God. No, they
That's
are
right.
different entities.
They are different entities. They represented themselves as gods. They were not gods. They were more sophisticated, technically accomplished humanoids from the Lyran system, and they engendered fear. Well, especially the old Yahweh. I mean, the old God, the old fire and brimstone God of the Old Testament. I mean, that was one specific person. I mean, can you imagine? I'm just going to bring up, the one biblical story that is so, horrifying, where, Abraham has been commanded to sacrifice his son Isaac. Now, and then at the last minute, an angel shows up and said, "Oh, well, that was just a test." You know, uh, God doesn't do that. A loving God doesn't do that. That
No,
is a human act of wielding fear and power. That's what that is. That is a and so, we are filled with Anunnaki DNA. We are the hybrids, from what I've heard, from not only people being regressed into past lives, but from many of the experiencers. We are the hybrids. We are the result of an incredible amount of at least 5 to 6 different DNA baths, if you will.
right. And another story that always like trips me up, and I've heard two different variations of it, but in the end the lesson is still the same, is Job,
Mm,
where God says, hey, this person will love me no matter what we do to him. And he says, and the devil goes, nope, he will turn his back on you. He goes, let's make a wager. And has his kids killed, puts them through
mhm.
all these tortures,
Yeah.
and then says, oh, because you still love me, I'm going to now grant you this. And it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah. That's
That,
horrible.
Yeah,
horrible,
it's
crazy
way
shit.
beyond test.
Crazy shit. In fact, Neil Simon wrote a very funny play called God's Favorite, which is a sort of a humorous take on what Job went through. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine any kind of superior being that would be, fooling around with humanoids and torturing them in this way. I think it's these were beings not that far removed from us, beings who with which whom we share substantial DNA, especially the O negative blood, which I have. You probably have it too, Michael. So many people that are involved now in the disclosure movement are we are actually related, to the ancients by way of our own negative blood or negative RH blood.
Actually, I have no idea what my blood type is. It's never been
Mm,
recorded.
well,
I contacted the hospital where I was born, and they said it was never written down.
that's
I
because you're
had
so young.
surgery.
That's because you're so young. They stopped doing it. I'm so bloody old. Oh my goodness. Yes, I'm so bloody old
Oh,
that
I'm not that young.
dinosaurs were roaming the earth. They barely knew that there was blood. But anyway, there it was a more common thing in the 1950s and 60s to record blood type.
Yeah, I
So
was born in
yeah,
the late 70s.
yeah, they didn't even care about it anymore at that point for some reason. Not sure why,
I
but
know when
you
they say mixing the wrong type of bloods can be hazardous, you would think that would be
yeah.
never stopped being
Yeah,
recorded.
it can kill you, or it's nice to know if you have if you have O positive blood, which is the universal donor, you can go and give blood and know that many people will be helped. Or if you have O negative blood, it's nice to know that you can help that 3% of the population that need donated blood. So you should know. If you ever do decide to go donate blood, they will type it for you and you'll know.
And I went to when I was in the university and college, and I went to give blood, and one of the questions they asked me was, "Do you have any diseases, like bronchitis or anything?" I said, "Yes, I was born with bronchitis." They said, "Have you had an incident recently?" I said, "Yeah, like a week or two ago, a short
Oh.
spell." She
Mhm.
goes, "Well, then you can't give blood for 6 months to a year
Oh, yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's tainted." And so I'm like, always around what triggers it. So it's like, I'm never, it's like, so apparently all the methods short of injecting, taking a blood sample and just
Oh
randomly going
my.
up to someone and saying, "Can you type this?" Are
It's such a simple thing. We did it in chemistry class when I was in high school. I can't imagine they won't or don't or yet have a little kit like they do for DNA, sending DNA and to type your blood. I don't see why they wouldn't have that, but maybe I'm just thinking too logically. That's always possible.
that, or you're thinking too free will, then there's no
Yeah.
money in it.
Oh, right. Yeah. There's no money in it. But I don't know. I think they just lost interest. There was a reason they just stopped typing blood at birth, So, but anyway, that's one of the things that is a delineator apparently of carrying ancient DNA is that lack of the rhesus coating on the bloodline. They know when certain blood types came into being. In other words, that is a known thing, a historical thing. They know that. And they also know that O type was the first blood group ever presented. It has the oldest lineage, so that makes sense. So,
I have a feeling my blood type is probably, like you were saying, one that can accept any blood type, or
mhm.
is a common one, because when I had surgery done on my leg twice, they never were like, "Well, we were fortunate we had the blood on hand and were able to do
Oh,
this."
yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah,
like
yeah.
everything went smoothly. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, so
Well, they would have certainly typed your blood before any surgery. So it's there, the information is there somewhere.
yeah. I even asked the surgeon, I was like, so what was my blood type? And he went and looked at the documents and he says, nobody wrote it down.
Oh dear.
I was like, that just, to me, it seems more suspicious than anything. And I'm like, maybe I'm just not supposed to know my blood type because it's like
Well,
all these occurrences happening and it's the common denominator of it was never written down. I'm like, I'm sure it is,
it's
but
written
it's just
somewhere. It's
not.
written.
Yeah,
Well, you can, I'm sure there's a way to have it done inexpensively. I'm going to look into it myself, see what I can find out. And but at any rate, that's one of the things, one of the characteristics that seems to be common to many experiencers. I would say at least half or more of the experiencers who come to see me have O negative blood. That's a pretty high percentage when you consider that, as I said, only about 2 to 3% of the world's population has that blood type.
right,
So that's though that makes it a really disproportionate amount of people coming to my little office in Toronto, right? So,
right. Now, I'd like to take a moment and kind of address something that in your introduction you brought up, like inner life regression, where
mhm.
you mentioned we talked about it backstage, and I think it's worth people hearing. And so, would you mind explaining that?
Oh, not at all, not at all. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, in when you're becoming a hypnotherapist and taking different certifications, one of them is called metaphysical hypnosis, which involves past life regression, which we've already sort of explained, and also interlife regression. Now, interlife regression is absolutely fascinating, and I actually enjoy it a lot more than doing the past life thing. It's so fascinating. But what interlife regression is it is about what we experience between lives when we are in that healing period and deciding, analyzing our past life and deciding whether to come in again to the physical world. And the technique that I was taught was established by a very renowned psychiatrist named Dr. Michael Newton. So Michael Newton, this Newtonian technique, is really something that he sort of discovered. So we found that when we get people into that zone where they have come out of their last life, there are commonalities that they all experience. And I think it's like 8 commonalities. First, they meet their loved ones, then they go to have a review. I know it sounds far fetched, but they go to have a review of their last lifetime. I don't know if it's holographic. I'm not sure how it's presented. People have told me different things when they're in hypnosis. Some people have told me it's like a television. Some people have told me it's like a hologram. So, whatever that experience is, you process your last life and you see your counsel. And apparently, we all have counsels that are assigned to us, which is actually a group of, usually it's about a dozen beings. It can be less, but these beings have our welfare, or the individual's welfare and progress, completely at the forefront. So when you see your counsel, it's not punitive, Michael. It's not like it's not, I mean, I'm a good Catholic girl, but it has nothing to do with penance. It's nothing like that. You do, however, in some way process your last life and take away what you need to do to learn or to solve the inequity, or whatever it is. And then there is the choice of whether or not you are going to go back into the 3D dense physical world. Now, I can tell you that, as you can probably assume, when we learn to do these different procedures in hypnotherapy, we work on each other. That's how we learn. We work on each other all day for days. We work on each other. So, in my experience, the probably the first one of going through the interlife regression, um, I recalled very distinctly that my beloved brother and my sister and I, we were in the same soul group. So we were all, in our spirit bodies or our etheric bodies at the same time. And my brother and my sister really wanted to come back into physical life. And they had to sort of convince me, because I said, "Oh, this being that's going to be our mother, she's difficult, and it's going to be tough and blah blah blah." And they convinced me. And so we did all come in together in this physical lifetime. So there's a lot of that going on, and as I mentioned before, we incarnate in family groups usually, but we change roles. Like sometimes your mother could be your brother, your father could be your husband. So it's a little bit creepy when you think of it sometimes, but don't think about it too much. It's that maybe that's one of the reasons why we have no memory. So we can have a fresh canvas every time that we come in. A fresh canvas to be positive and healing and loving.
Right. And we're approaching the end of the hour. And
Oh.
I wanted, because talking about the inner life, it got me thinking for a moment. And I don't know if you have time to address this or not, but those, like I have had near death experiences and other people have, are we experiencing an interlife regression without being guided? Because it seems like we're almost doing the same thing.
It
Or,
can happen that you get into that zone and then you're usually sent back. I had that experience myself when I was a young child, of actually dying and being sent back. So there's usually a point where you can go no farther than you've gone, if you know what I mean. You can go through you can go through the lightened door and maybe even see your counsel, but you don't really belong there yet. It's not your time. And then eventually at some point, some being offers you the choice. You can stay or you can go, and then whoosh back into your body. So again, a universe of free choice, and there are many near-death experiences. And then people are often incredibly super psychically aware after they have a near-death experience. It seems to trigger some incredible awareness or wake up some kind of awareness, and then that person's life is generally forever changed.
so it makes me kind of wonder, because I had an experience when I was 2, and I've been unraveling it amongst my shows and everything. And one of the things that I noticed, and it kind of ties into what you're saying, is I have memory of when I was falling down a shaft,
Mm-hmm.
that I was talking with a being that was helping me and discussing with them, am I going to stay? Am I going to go?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was deciding if I'm staying, I remember saying, I need to be able to do this, this, and this. I have to have these abilities. And I'm like sitting here thinking to myself in my 20s and 30s as I'm remembering this, going, who at 2 years old has the foresight to say, yes, if I'm going back, give me this, this, and this? And could it be I was doing an inner life regression at that moment,
Well,
talking with the council, and
yeah,
coming?
that you could look at it that way. Certainly, you were in your soul identity. You were no age, you weren't 2 years old, you were certainly in your soul identity, and you were negotiating and deciding whether or not to come back. I don't know if I would really call that an interlife regression, but certainly you were in that zone. You had gone to that place where we go initially. And I think, honestly, I think it's just another vibrational, it's just a step up. It's just another vibrational level. And it's also a level where many ETs can travel freely. So that are all many ETs that are already living in these higher vibrational levels can move in and out of our what we call afterlife seamlessly. But that's a whole nother subject. So
Right.
we'll have
And
to get to that next time, Michael.
yes, we'll definitely have to have you back on because there's a couple of topics that we didn't unfortunately have time to get to that I think would be worth sharing. And so,
Anytime. Anytime, Michael. I would love to come back and chat with you and visit with you. And I would just like to say if anyone wants to reach me, you can do so through my website, lightworkhypnosis.com. And I always get back to everyone. It may take me a minute, but I always do. And if you feel like having a peek at my most recent book, it's called Intersections, a true story of extraterrestrial contact, available on Amazon.
perfect. And I have those links and the title of your book in the description. So if
Perfect.
I am missing a link, I will add it to the links. But so,
Fabulous.
what is one pearl of wisdom that you would, if you had the opportunity to leave with everyone tonight, what would be the one thing that you would hope that people take from this?
Fear is the enemy, and knowledge of your own experiences is profound. So please do not, if you're having some memories or if you're having some feelings, or don't discount them, and certainly don't ignore them because of fear. Fear is the tool of, you know, the negative. And I promise you that knowledge and integration of your experiences into your present time life can be incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. So do not be afraid.
Thank you. That is beautifully said. And wow, I'm kind of speechless right now.
A rarity, Michael.
Well,
Well,
again, I would love to thank you for coming on and
thank
trusting in
you.
me to come on the show because we had not met before this.
hmm
And so thank you for taking the chance.
Thank you, Michael. And I look forward to seeing you again before too long. You got my number, so just give me a jingle and we can go down the rabbit hole again.
I will definitely be in touch. And if not on this show, look for her. She may be on another show. I am a part of 3 series, so we will definitely get you on possibly all 3 of them.
Wonderful, Michael. Thank you so much. And
Ooh. So thank you to everyone in the chat room and everyone watching. Make it a great day, night, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And I will send us out with the outro.